By June of 1844, men like William and Wilson Law and Francis and Chauncey Higbee were lifting up their heels against the prophet, publishing false affidavits, spreading lies, and plotting against Joseph's life. In the closing weeks of the prophet Joseph's life, he had 3 highly symbolic dreams involving some of those enemies, as well as the prophetic destiny of himself and 2 of his brothers. In one dream, Joseph was riding in a carriage near the temple, accompanied by his guardian angel. Along the way, they encountered 2 large snakes, so locked together that they had no power. Joseph's guardian explained that the serpents represented Robert Foster and Chauncey Higbee. Further out on the prairie, William and Wilson Law dragged Joseph from the carriage and threw him into a deep pit. As Joseph struggled to escape, he heard the Law brothers call to him for help. Wilson was in the grasp of a tiger, while William was blue in the face with green poison oozing from his mouth. A huge serpent had coiled itself about William. The snake occasionally relaxed its grip long enough for William to cry out, "Oh, brother Joseph, come and save me as I die." Joseph shouted in reply, "I cannot, for you have tied my hands behind me." The pit Joseph later found himself in was Carthage jail. An important part of the ministry of a prophet of God is to forewarn people of impending disaster as a result of sinful behavior. But there seems to be a point of no return. Those who willfully turn against the prophet's counsel may find themselves, as did the Higbees and the Laws, in the grasp of serpents, or worse. Joseph had 2 dreams involving steamboats. Joseph dreamed that he stood on a peninsula facing a large harbor with a pier extending into the water. The pier was accessed by several bridges. Joseph saw a steamboat entering the harbor. A strong wind blew the boat under one of the bridges and upset the craft. "I ran to the boat," said Joseph, expecting the persons would all drown, and wishing to assist them, I put my hand against the side of the boat, and with one surge, I shoved it under the bridge and righted it up, and then told them to take care of themselves. But it was not long before I saw them starting out into the main body of the water again. By now a storm was raging, and the wind roiled the water. In the dream, Joseph turned to his friends and said regarding the ship's passengers, if they did not understand the signs of the times and the spirit of prophecy, they would be apt to be lost. Seconds later, waves broke over the boat, which foundered and sank with all on board. On another occasion, Joseph dreamed that he and Hiram boarded a large steamboat. It was anchored some distance from shore in a small bay near the ocean. The boat caught fire. Their only escape was to leap into the water. Joseph said, "Hiram and I tried our faith at walking upon the water. At first we sank in the water nearly to our knees. But as we proceeded, we increased in faith, and were soon able to walk upon the water." Looking toward the east, they watched as the steamboat drifted toward the wharf and town engulfed in flame. There was great consternation among the officers, crew, and passengers because of a magazine filled with ammunition on board. Said Joseph, "In a moment suddenly it blew up with a great noise and sank in the deep water with all on board. The town took fire." Joseph said, "The scene of destruction and horrors of the frightened inhabitants was terrible." The key to survival of the first boat was, as Joseph said, understanding the signs of the times and the spirit of prophecy. The people on board were in peril from high winds that blew the craft against a bridge, and it capsized. Possessing great power, Joseph was able to right the craft. He counseled the people to take care of themselves, but they foolishly returned to the ocean and a raging storm. The boat foundered, and all were lost. There are many perils in the last days that place people in great jeopardy. Through wise counsel, the living prophet can rescue them from a certain fate. But woe to them who return to the source of temptation, for they may be lost. In the second instance, Joseph and Hiram were on board ship with many others. On board was a source of destruction, gunpowder. Used properly, ammunition can protect and preserve people against the enemy. Improperly protected, the ammunition brings destruction and death to the people nearby. Joseph faced opposition all throughout his life. Serious attempts were made to destroy him and the saints. But the power of the priesthood and their personal righteousness provided protection to Joseph and the church. But Joseph's greatest danger came from those within the faith, people in positions of trust and leadership. Not by choice, Joseph and Hiram were forced from among those people. Having withdrawn, brought the wrath of God upon the apostates, and they and the nearby city were destroyed by fire. It is fascinating that Joseph and Hiram stepped onto the water and headed across a vast ocean. In one case, Joseph first told his friends that he could stem the waves and the storm and swim in the waters more rapidly than the steamboat. They laughed and warned him that he would drown. The waters looked clear and beautiful, though exceedingly rough, said Joseph. And I said I believed I could swim, and I would try it anyhow. Joseph swam a short distance. A towering wave threatened him, but he found himself on top, and atop a second wave. I soon had power to swim with my head out of water, so the waves did not break over me at all, he said. He swam a great distance, faster, said Joseph, than a steamboat. In the second instance, Joseph and Hiram jumped from the burning steamboat. They sank to their knees in the water, but their faith increased, and they were soon able to walk upon the water. Joseph and Hiram were soon out of sight of land when they heard a familiar voice. They turned and saw Samuel coming to them from the east. After a moment's conversation, he informed me that he had been lonesome and had made up his mind to go with me across the mighty deep. Samuel had ridden by horseback into Carthage to be with his brothers in prison. He was forced to flee for his life by a mob who chased him for many miles. That ride apparently brought about a hernia that led to Samuel's death. Thus, in his quest to be with and to protect his brothers, Samuel died. He died as the third martyr. But what about them walking on the water? Water is symbolic of many things. It is symbolic of life. Water surrounds an infant in the mother's womb before birth. In a baptismal font, water is symbolic of redemption. In a Jewish mikveh, water cleanses a person from ritual impurities. When the seas heave themselves beyond their bounds, it is symbolic of the last days of destruction and death. Walking upon the water is symbolic of having all power over this agent of life, this agent of redemption, and this agent of destruction. As the Lord's presiding representative in the last dispensation, Joseph Smith held the sealing key, a key with power over the elements. Hiram was his associate president. Samuel, their brother, had likewise made the ultimate sacrifice that earned him the title of greatest honor, a martyr. They had won victory over their enemies. They had won victory over death and hell. The three brothers walked side by side. We all started again, said Joseph. And in a short time were blessed with the first sight of a city, whose silver steeples and towers were more beautiful than any that I had ever seen or heard of on earth. It stood, as it were, upon the western shore of the mighty deep we were walking on, and its order and glory seemed far beyond the wisdom of man. Many who have visited paradise and returned to the earth have described a city, with music emanating from every living thing. In an instant they took us on board and saluted with welcome and with music, such as is not of earth. fall of June 27, 1844, at Carthage jail. In January of 1880, the Lord told Elder Wilford Woodruff, "My servant Joseph sealed his testimony with his own blood, which testimony has been in force upon all the world from the hour of his death. Let no man be afraid to lay down his life for my sake. For he that layeth down his life for my sake shall find it again, and have eternal